Chapter 27. Demagogue, mutters Dr. Franklin. Our excellent sprout pen, the latest of his crypto-Jesuit ruling family, and his satanic arrangement with Mr. Allen, his shameless attentions to the Presbyterian mobility, has the effrontery to speak of crushing this demagogue? Well, aye, demagogue. Milton thought it a goblin word that might yet describe good patriots. Good patriots all, cries the impulsive Mr. Dixon, raising his cup. Dr. Franklin observes them, one at a time, through the tinted lenses of spectacles of his own invention, for moderating the glare of the sun, whose elevation upon his nose varies according to the message it happens to be inflecting, giving over all the impression of a visitor from very far away indeed. The geometers have encountered the eminent Philadelphian quite by chance in the pungent and dim back reaches of an apothecary in Locust Street, each gentleman upon a distinct mission of chemical necessity, as among these shelves and bins the Godfrey's cordial and Bateman's drops, Hooper's female pills and Smith's medicinal snuff, hasty bargains are struck, strings of numbers and letters, and alchemists' signs whispered, and some never written down, whilst a quiet warmed narcosis, as of a drawing to evening far out in a country of fields where drying herbal crops lie, just perceptibly breathing, possesses the shop interior, rendering it indistinct as to size, legality, or destiny. Dixon is accosting at length a clerk who has taken him for one more English tourist hectically out in search of Chinaman's drugs. Anything ideally with opium in it will do. Alcohol to keep it in solution, of course, perhaps some formulation that would go well with the Daffy's elixir of which we plan to purchase. How many cases was that again, Mr. Mason? Mason glares back, too keenly aware of the celebrated American philosopher's eye upon them, having hoped to project before it somehow at least the forms of precedence, but of course Dixon's rustic familiarities have abolished yet again any such hope. One more station of the cross to be put up with. Any matter of supply falls into your area, Dixon. Have a word with Mr. McLean if you're not sure, hearing how it sounds even as he goes on with it. Dixon remains cheery. In that welcome event, making a carefree motion in the air with his handkerchief, 100 cases should do the trick, for this time out anyway. Now, as to that opiated article we were discussing. Aye, we call it laudanum, sir, compounded according to the original formula of the noted Dr. Paracelsus of Germany. 100 cases, screams Mason. Have you gone insane? This is a church-going province. 'Twill never be authorized. Preventive against a variety of ailments, sir. Excellent anti-costive properties given the uncertainty of the diet. The commissioners know all too well about Daffy's elixir and the uses 'tis put to. Mr. Franklin, who has been attending the exchange, here feels he must point out. And being imported, 'tis only to be had at prices charged in the English shops. Now, for 1/10 of that outrageous sum, our good apothecary, Mr. Mispick, will compound you a salutis impossible to distinguish from the original. Or you may design your own, consulting with him as to your preferred ratio of jalap to senna. Which variety of treacle pleases you? All the fine points of daffiolatry are known to him. He has seen it all, and nothing will shock or offend him. He raises a finger. Strangers, heed my wise advice. Never pay the retail price. This is kind of you, sir, for fair. Oh, Dixon. This is kind of you, sir, for fair. Mr. Mason's choice is illustrative of a more Bacchic leaning, enjoying priority of mine. So must I rest content with more modest outlays from my own meagre purse, alas, for any filters particularly useful to myself. Dr. Franklin shifts his lenses as if for a clearer look at Dixon. A smile struggles to find its way through lips pursed in speculation. But before it quite may, being the sort of man who, though never seen to consult a timepiece, always knows the exact time. Come, he bids the astronomers abruptly. You have not yet been to a Philadelphia coffee house. Poh! We must amend that. Something no visitor should miss. I must transact an item or two of business. Would you honour me by having a brief sip at my local, the Blue Jamaica? London, Mr. Mason is soon reporting, is quite thoroughly charmed by your glass harmonica, thanks to the artistry of the excellent Miss Davies. I have done my utmost to convince Miss Davies that, given the general frangibility, use of any strong vibrato could prove, putting it as gallantly as possible, unwise. Yet she plays so beautifully. My idle toy has found itself fortunately arrived among a host of virtuosi. Heavens, the Mozart child, and these tales I keep hearing of the young Parisian Dr. Mesmer, who plays it, 'tis said, unusually well. Not the magnetical gent, says Mason. The very same. Known to the R.S. for some time, I collect. At the Mitre, he is ever reliable as a topic of lively discourse. Where Franklin is a member, and thou've scarcely been a guest, Dixon may be muttering to himself. Aloud, excuse me, friend, briskly upon his feet. Where does one go over the heap here? Mr. Franklin points out to him a door to the yard, and when he is out of earshot, begins, it seems abruptly, to inquire about the surveyor's culvert connections. Mason is perplexed. I didn't know there were any. I imagined that being of a Quaker family, he was deemed acceptable to the Pennsylvanians, but have ever been at a loss to explain his appeal, if any, to the Marylanders. The Culverts are content to live in England. As they are Catholics, their children are educated across the Channel at St. Omer. One of the Jesuits teaching there is a certain Lemaire, who is native to Durham and a particular friend of Dixon's teacher, William Emerson. Yes, but you'd have to ask Dixon about the Jesuit. I know of him only as the partner of Roger Boscovich, the 2 degrees of latitude in Italy. From Rome to Rimini, aye. Franklin, behind his orchid-hued lenses, waits for Mason to work out the comparisons. What's going on, then? Mason trying to peer, he hopes not, as truculently as he feels, into the shadowy lunettes. You might sometime find yourself discussing these matters with your second. After which, Mason replies, as Franklin suddenly, with naked, narrowed eyes, looks over the tops of his spectacles and nods encouragingly, I am to relate the minutes of it all to you? Mr. Franklin, replacing his glasses, not if it causes you discomfort, sir. Although some discomforts may ever be eased by timely application of Ben's universal balm, yet do others continue intractable. Why, Dr. Franklin, you are urging me to this, may I say, dismal choice. Oh, wagering against your loyalty, Franklin shrugs. An elementary exercise, and pray do not feel you have in any way offended me. As an adult, I am no stranger to rejection. I have learned long to deal with it in dignity as a sane man would, and without resentment. Motive for it, though, I may enjoy in abundance. Sir, I cannot spy upon him for you. I am sorry the politics here have become so, as one would say, Italian in their intricacies, but my contractual tasks alone will be difficult enough without... and here is Mr. Dixon. Do you know a lad named Lewis? Said he knew you, Dr. Franklin. Where was this? Franklin has begun twirling the hair upon either side of his head into long curls. Just out in the alley. He tried to sell me a watch. Said it was a Masonic astrologer's model. Signs of the zodiac, phases of the moon. You didn't? Couldn't. Not unless you wants to lend me. I'll go have a look, Mason rising. Come along, Dixon, and point him out. I think he's gone. Dixon, now preoccupied with pouring the contents of a small vial into his coffee. Mason, unable to insist without appearing to wish to consult out of Franklin's hearing, and needing to piss anyway, shrugs and withdraws. The moment he vanishes, Franklin begins to press Dixon upon the topic of Mason's East India Company connections. Is that the Dutch or the English one? Dixon's fizz altogether innocent. I'm ever confounding 'em. Franklin at least allowing himself to chuckle. Friend Dixon, loyalty is a gem, of worth innate, whose price is never noticed till too late. We've had an adventure or two, you see. Ah, me. Don't suppose the name Sam Peach of Chelford would ring a bell? With quizzical sincerity. One of those lads in the Beggar's Opera? Well, well, Mr. Dixon, be easy. I release you. And look ye, here again is your companion. The man's an entire instrument shop, says Mason. Droll sort of friend for you to have, Dr. Franklin. Interesting wig. Told me a riddle, in fact. Why is the king like a near-sighted gunner? Well, damned if I know, I said back. But Dr. Franklin is sure to. Mr. Mason, dear, dear, how would I know any such joke or person? Why, to help you find out how much and how foolishly we have to spend, perhaps, sing Mason and Dixon. Phlogiston and electrical fire, cries the eminent Philadelphia. If I'm not the biter bit, as you'd say. Transparent, was I? Awkward. Should have just asked them at the Royal Society, being a member after all. Indeed, I was among 'em at the time you fought the French vessel in London when you wrote to them. Quite a hubbub, gentlemen, though absent from the meeting which approved their reply to you, innocent, you understand, I did attend the next, a classic display of those people at their worst. Taken one at a time, dear Tom Birch, August Hadley, the Quadrant's eponym, Mr. Short, Dr. Morton, excellent minds, invigorating company, but when they got all in a herd, bless us, the stubbornness. They knew the French had Ben Coolin and would be as content to sink the Seahorse there as off Brest. They all knew. But they could never allow upstarts to advise them in matters of global strategy. Alas, the British, bloody-minded to the end, so long as it be somebody else's blood. Thus the Board of Trade, thus the House of Commons, up there, day after day, instructing them, gently, a schoolmaster for idiots. Sooner or later, no offence. Gentlemen, Americans must fight them. Hurrah, howbeit, for I am rescued. He refers in his courtly way to the arrival of a pair of young women, both quite pleasant-looking, though decked out with what, even to the unschooled eye, seems wilful eccentricity, and who may or may not have been among those in the carriage which had been earlier at the landing. There he is! Oh, doctor! More than vigorously nudging one another and laughing at different rates of speed. These are Molly and Dolly. Franklin introduces them, students of the electrical arts, whom I am pleased from time to time to examine in the subject. Yes, if you've the inclination tonight, gentlemen, I am giving a recital upon the glass instrument at the sign of the Fair Anchor upon Carpenter's Wharf, just down from the London coffee house. 'Tis a sort of, what is the word I grope for? Gin shop? Sings Molly. Opium den? Cries Dolly. Ladies, ladies. Doctor, doctor, as the philosopher, attempting to maintain his hair in some order, is slowly absorbed into a mirthful cloud of tartan-edged emerald green and luminous coral taffeta, prints with a lapdog motif, ribbons with sailor beware, no free kisses, be quick about it, and other humorous slogans woven into them. Flounces and loose hats and wandering tresses, the astronomers reckon it as good a moment as any to be off. Passing into the street, they can hear Molly piping, and she swore to me she saw it glowing in the dark. Outside they stand, blinking. I don't know. Hadn't thou imagined him as somehow more organized? Aye. By reputation he is a man entirely at ease with the inner structures of time itself. Yet here he seems strangely unfocused, as we lensmen say. Mason rolling his eyes. Perhaps we should pop into that Fair Anchor this evening. What do you think? I happen those two canny electricians will be there. Rather fancied old Dolly myself. Woman knows how to turn herself out, did thou notice? Hearing what he imagines to be an emphasis upon two, Mason directs at Dixon an effortful smile, meaning, go ahead, but don't expect me to ascend warily out of my melancholia, just so everybody else can have their own idea of a good time. Which happens to be the most Dixon would ever think of asking him anyhow, and withal, when they show up at the Fair Anchor that night, it turns out to be Mason's sort of place nicely, basic and bleak, discouraging every attempt, even grunting, that might suggest conviviality, the wood furniture carved upon, splintered and scarred. The stale ale is underhopped stopped as 'tis overwatered. They secure a place along the bar, and presently Mr. Franklin appears. Having exchanged his orchid spectacles for half lenses of nocturnal blue, the occupants of the room, hitherto strewn without more purpose than the human jetsam of any large seaport, all sit up at once, draw together, and with the precision of a long-rehearsed clack, begin to chatter of Miss Davies and Gluck and ineluctably Mesmer. The instrument awaits him, its nested crystal hemispheres, each tuned to a note of the scale, carefully brought hither through reefed topsail seas and likewise whelming anxieties back at Lloyd's regarding the inherent vice of glass, added to the yet imperfectly known contingencies of voyage by ship, brought to shine in this commodious corner beneath the portrait of some Swedish statesman too darkened with room smoke for anyone to be sure who it is any more. Oxenstierna, Gillicksjerna, Gillenborg, who knows? Discussions often becoming quite spirited, though of course conducted in Swedish. It has hung there, growing in its anonymity since the early times of the Swedish settlers, gazing into the room at the nightly dramas of lost consciousness and squandered coin, at gaming and roaring and varieties inexhaustible of argument. Behind it rises a flight of stairs, up and down which creeps a ceaseless traffic. Many pause to stare over the false mahogany railing at Dr. Franklin seated at the glass harmonica, or down upon the figures and into the décolletages of Molly and Dolly, who not only have showed up, but have brought along 2 more young women with similar ideas about fashion. "These doxies," Mason mutters. "Look ye, they're staring at me. I can feel myself becoming unreasonably suspicious." "Rest easy, 'tis me they want," Dixon waving. "Jerry, Charlie, over here." The ladies seem delighted. Dr. Franklin waits for the parties to rearrange their seating, then strikes a C major chord. The room quiets instantly. He begins to play, rotating by way of a treadle arrangement the horizontal stack of glasses through a trough of water to keep the rims ever wet, and then simply touching each wet rim moving by, as he would have touched the key of an organ to produce a queerly hoarse, ringing tone. If chimes could whisper, if melodies could pass away and their souls wander the earth, if ghosts danced at ghost ridottos, 'twould require such music, sentiment ever held back, ever at the edge of breaking forth, in fragments as glass breaks. Upon one of his intermissions, the doctor, having secured a pot of ale, approaches the geometers. "Come and meet Mr. Tally-Ho of Virginia," who proves to be anxious that they visit with Colonel Washington of that province. "You'll want to have a chat. He's been out there, knows the country, the inhabitants, surveyor, like yourselves." Dixon here must suppress a chuckle, knowing how it annoys Mason to be styled so. "Bad enough at the Cape calling us both astronomers," Mason has complained, and more than once. "I'm being insulted coming and going. It's not fair." "He's said to be of a Weir Valley family. They told me to look..." No. Dixon. "He's said to be of a Weir Valley family. They told me to look him up." At dawn, they are led to a remote crossroads north of the city. Out of the cold humidity rolls smoothly a coach of peculiar design. "But step aboard, gents, and this machine'll have ye's in Mount Vernon ere Phoebus lifts his knob again." "Is it safe?" inquires Mason. "Perfectly. 'Tis the road that's perilous." Mr. Tally-Ho shaking both their hands in farewell. "You're not coming along," Dixon collects. "Not I. He'll not wish to see me. Lord's mercy, no." They ride all night and neither sleeps. The coach stops for nothing. Meals, each a distinct kind of sandwich, are passed down to them through a hatch. The remains, including plates, are thrown out the window, taken by the wind. There are newspapers and a rack full of books, and under the driver's seat is a cask of Philadelphia porter whose tap extends within for the use of the passengers. When they must piss, they do so into glazed jars, with Chinese scenes upon them. By the time they consider pissing out the coach doors, so swiftly have they travelled that they miss the chance. The driver is calling, "Potomac, just ahead. Gents," he drops them off by the river, into the slap and scent of winter upon the wing, and points them uphill. Bearing nothing but what they may have stuffed hastily into their pockets, they begin the ascent to Mount Vernon. Chapter